I watched Marina's face drain of color as our director dismantled her presentation on quarterly customer retention strategies. This was the third time in 2 months she'd struggled to defend her proposals during critical meetings. She glanced at me from across the conference table, her eyes narrowing with sudden realization. For 8 months, she had been stealing my ideas, presenting them as her own, and climbing the corporate ladder on my intellectual property while I remained stuck in place. Now the tables had turned, but the outcome wasn't exactly what I'd expected. These projections contradict the market research we just completed, our director said, flipping through the slides with growing frustration. And some of these customer segments don't even align with our current business model. Did you verify these numbers with the analytics team? Marina shuffled her papers nervously. There must have been a miscommunication about the latest data sets. The conference room fell into uncomfortable silence. Everyone was thinking the same thing. This wasn't the Marina they knew, the one who always seemed to have the most brilliant insights, the one management had been considering for the senior strategy role I'd been working toward for years. Last year, I would never have imagined myself strategically misleading a colleague. But after months of having my work appropriated without credit, watching someone else receive accolades for my ideas while my career stalled, I'd reached my breaking point. The most unsettling part? No one but Marina and I understood what was really happening, and she couldn't call me out without admitting what she'd been doing all along. Updated. Wow, didn't expect this post to gain so much traction overnight. Thanks for all the support and thoughtful comments. Several people asked if I felt guilty about my approach. Honestly, I've gone back and forth on this. When someone repeatedly uses your intellectual work against you, is fighting fire with fire ever justified? I'd been at Axion Technology Solutions for 3 years when Marina joined our product strategy team. She arrived with impressive credentials, Wharton MBA, experience at a top consulting firm, and recommendations that had our director practically giddy with excitement. During her first few weeks, I genuinely tried to help her acclimate, sharing documentation on our systems and introducing her to key stakeholders across departments. The first incident occurred about a month after she joined. I'd spent 2 weekends analyzing customer feedback data and identified a pattern in user behavior that suggested a simple UI change could significantly improve engagement. When I mentioned this to Marina during our morning coffee run at the Starbucks across from our office, she seemed interested but not overly enthusiastic. That afternoon, during our weekly strategy meeting, I was preparing to present my findings when Marina spoke up first. She articulated my exact analysis, down to the specific user segments and the proposed solution. She even referenced the same example cases I had mentioned to her earlier. Our director was impressed, immediately assigning her to lead the implementation team. The shock left me speechless. By the time I collected myself enough to speak up, the conversation had already moved to the next agenda item. After the meeting, I approached her privately. "That was my analysis you presented," I said quietly, as we walked back to our desks. She raised her eyebrows with practiced innocence. "Was it? I've been looking at the same data. Great minds think alike, I guess." Then she smiled and walked away. Tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps we had reached similar conclusions independently. But over the next 2 months, the pattern became unmistakable. A product pricing strategy I'd mentioned during a team lunch appeared in her next presentation. A marketing approach I'd discussed while we were both working late emerged in her report to senior management the following week. Each time, she would casually gather information from me in seemingly innocuous conversations, then repackage it as her original thinking. After the third incident, I decided to address it directly. I asked Marina to grab coffee off-site, hoping a neutral location might facilitate honesty. "I've noticed that several ideas I've shared with you have been presented as your own work," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. "It's becoming a problem for me professionally." "I think you're being oversensitive," she replied, stirring her latte. "In collaborative environments, ideas build on each other. You should speak up faster in meetings if credit is so important to you." When I escalated to our HR business partner, I received sympathetic nods, but little action. "Document specific instances," she advised. "And have you tried addressing this directly with Marina?" Circular advice that placed the burden back on me. A conversation with our director proved equally fruitless. "You're both valuable team members," he said, visibly uncomfortable. "I'm sure you can work this out professionally. We're all on the same team here." Classic management deflection. Meanwhile, Marina's reputation soared. She received praise in department-wide emails. She was invited to executive strategy sessions. 6 months after joining, she was given lead on the Johnson account, a high-visibility client project I had specifically requested to manage. During my mid-year review, I was told I needed to demonstrate more innovative thinking and contribute more original ideas to the team. The irony would have been comical if it wasn't devastating my career prospects. The breaking point came during our annual department dinner at Morton's Steakhouse. I stepped out of the restroom and overheard our director telling the VP of operations that Marina had transformed our approach to client solutions and was consistently thinking outside the box in ways no one else on the team does. They were discussing moving her into the senior strategy role I had been working toward for years. That night, lying awake in my apartment, I realized the fundamental flaw in my approach. I had been fighting a losing battle on Marina's terms. Her entire strategy depended on one crucial element: my continued generation of quality ideas that she could appropriate. What if I changed the equation? I began my counter-offensive carefully. The next morning, when Marina stopped by my desk with her usual casual fishing expedition, "How's that North American market expansion analysis coming along?" I was prepared. "Actually, I've been exploring something interesting," I said, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "The data suggests we might want to reduce our focus on enterprise clients and pivot harder toward the small business segment. The margins are better than we thought." This approach directly contradicted our company's established strategy and recent market research, which clearly showed our profitability came primarily from enterprise clients. Any competent analyst would have questioned it immediately, but only if they did the research themselves rather than stealing someone else's work. Marina leaned in, interest piqued. "Really? That's counterintuitive. What are you seeing that suggests that?" "Just some patterns in the quarterly numbers," I said vaguely. "I'm still working through the analysis, but the preliminary data is compelling." She nodded thoughtfully, and I could practically see her mental gears turning, calculating how to repackage this insight as her own. A week later, in our monthly strategy meeting, Marina confidently presented her market recalibration recommendation, suggesting we shift resources away from enterprise clients toward small businesses. She had elaborated on my flawed premise with impressively professional slides, but the core idea, the fundamentally incorrect premise, remained. Our chief revenue officer frowned. "That contradicts everything our market analysis shows. Enterprise clients represent 70% of our profit margin. And we just invested heavily in our enterprise sales team last quarter," our director added, looking perplexed. "Marina, did you coordinate this analysis with the revenue team?" Marina faltered, clearly unprepared for this level of scrutiny. "I thought we should consider alternative perspectives. Sometimes conventional wisdom needs challenging." The awkward silence that followed spoke volumes. For the first time, her borrowed brilliance had failed her. I noticed several team members exchanging glances, confusion evident on their faces. For my second strategic misinformation campaign, I chose something more technical. During a casual lunch in the break room, knowing Marina was within earshot, I mentioned to a colleague that I was exploring API-first implementation for our legacy systems as a potential efficiency solution. This approach would have been disastrous for our technical architecture. Our legacy systems were specifically designed for database-first interactions, and an API-first approach would require a complete rebuild of our core infrastructure. Any engineer or product manager with baseline technical knowledge would have immediately recognized the incompatibility. 2 weeks later, Marina presented a technical innovation roadmap to our leadership team, prominently featuring an API-first integration strategy for our legacy systems. Our CTO interrupted her presentation just minutes in. "This approach would essentially require rebuilding our entire technical stack from the ground up," he said, clearly confused. "It's fundamentally incompatible with our current architecture." "Who from the engineering team validated this?" Marina stumbled through a response about disruptive innovation and challenging technical assumptions, but the damage was done. Her credibility had taken another significant hit. For my final act, I needed something that would resonate at the highest levels of the organization. With our annual client conference approaching, where all executives would be present, I carefully laid my trap. In the elevator with Marina, I mentioned that I was researching predictive sentiment analysis using quantum computing principles for our customer feedback systems. This was complete technobabble, a meaningless combination of buzzwords that sounded impressive but had no practical application for our business. During the innovation panel at the conference, our CEO asked about emerging technologies the team was exploring. Marina confidently raised her hand. "We're investigating predictive sentiment analysis using quantum computing principles for customer feedback," she stated with authority. "Early exploration suggests significant promise in this area." The silence that followed was excruciating. Our head of engineering looked completely bewildered. The CEO tilted his head slightly, trying to parse what she'd just said. "Could you elaborate on how quantum computing principles would apply to sentiment analysis in our specific business context?" the CTO asked, his tone carefully measured. What followed was 5 painful minutes of Marina attempting to explain a concept that didn't exist in any meaningful way. She kept glancing in my direction, but I was studiously reviewing my notes, offering no lifeline. "Perhaps we should discuss this offline with the technical team for more details," our CEO finally suggested, effectively ending her floundering explanation. The whispers began almost immediately after the conference. In the break room, I overheard two senior managers discussing how Marina seemed to be losing her edge and proposing increasingly disconnected ideas. In meetings, I noticed people were no longer automatically accepting her contributions. Questions and requests for supporting data became more frequent. 2 weeks later, the senior strategy role she'd been positioned for was given to a colleague from another department. The high-profile Johnson account was quietly reassigned to a more senior team member for additional oversight. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came one evening when most of the office had cleared out. Marina appeared at my desk, arms folded tight across her chest. "You set me up," she said, voice tight with controlled anger. "You deliberately fed me bad information." I continued organizing my notes without looking up. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The market strategy, the API proposal, that quantum computing nonsense." I finally met her gaze. "If you had developed those ideas yourself, you would have known they were flawed. Or if you'd properly credited me when sharing my actual good ideas, we might have had a collaborative relationship instead of whatever this is." Her face flushed with frustration and the clear recognition of her predicament. She couldn't report me without admitting her own pattern of intellectual theft. "This isn't professional," she finally said. "Neither is stealing someone else's work," I replied calmly. "I guess we've both made our choices." She stormed off, and I felt a complex mix of emotions: satisfaction that my strategy had worked, but also uneasiness about the methods I'd employed. Had I crossed an ethical line in my pursuit of justice? Updated. Thanks for the supportive messages. Some asked if Marina ever complained to HR about me. She didn't. How could she without admitting her behavior? Several of you questioned if my approach risked company goals. Honestly, I chose ideas that affected presentations, but not actual implementation. Was I taking things too far? Maybe. But corporations rarely reward those who simply endure injustice quietly. The aftermath unfolded more gradually than I'd anticipated. Marina's reputation, once seemingly bulletproof, began showing significant cracks. In meetings, her contributions were met with increased scrutiny. "Can you share the data supporting that conclusion?" became a common refrain whenever she spoke. The automatic respect she'd commanded had evaporated. She attempted to adapt. I noticed she stopped approaching me entirely and began citing external sources for her ideas: industry reports, case studies, academic papers. She started bringing technical team members to meetings to validate her proposals beforehand. These were prudent changes, but they came too late. In corporate environments, perception becomes reality, and the perception of Marina had fundamentally shifted from innovative thinker to questionable judgment. Our director implemented a new process requiring written proposals with supporting data to be submitted 48 hours before major meetings, a policy clearly designed to fact-check presentations before they reached wider audiences. Though it applied to everyone, few doubted its true target. During our annual performance reviews, I received unexpectedly positive feedback. "You've demonstrated consistent analytical thinking," my director noted. "I appreciate your methodical approach to problems and how you validate ideas before bringing them forward." I received a merit increase above the standard percentage and was asked to lead a cross-functional project team, precisely the type of visibility I'd been seeking. Marina's review evidently went differently. She emerged from the conference room with reddened eyes and immediately requested PTO for the remainder of the week. When she returned, something had changed in her demeanor. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by a cautious, almost hesitant approach to interactions. The department restructuring announcement came 3 weeks later. I was assigned to lead a small team focused on strategic initiatives, including ownership of the Johnson account that had previously been Marina's flagship project. She was moved to a nebulous special projects role reporting to a different manager, a clear corporate sideline. Within a month, Marina updated her LinkedIn profile to "open to work." 2 weeks after that, she announced she'd accepted a position at a competitor. Her departure email was clinically professional, mentioning nothing about relationships or memories, just transition details for her remaining projects. At her sparsely attended farewell happy hour at the Cheesecake Factory across from our office, she approached me while I was waiting at the bar. "I hope you're satisfied," she said quietly. "I didn't want this outcome," I replied honestly. "I just wanted recognition for my work." She nodded slightly. "I should have handled things differently. But so should you." With that ambiguous statement hanging between us, she rejoined her remaining allies, and we didn't speak again. In the weeks following Marina's departure, an unexpected change occurred in my own behavior. Without the constant threat of having my ideas appropriated, I found myself speaking up more in meetings, sharing insights I would have previously kept guarded. My authentic contributions were finally receiving proper attribution, and my confidence grew accordingly. Our director called me in for a one-on-one meeting about 2 months after Marina left. "I've noticed a change in you these past few months," he observed. "You're contributing more substantively in our strategy discussions. That's exactly what we need in leadership roles here." The irony wasn't lost on me. The position I'd coveted, all along, that Marina had nearly secured through appropriating my work, was now potentially within my reach precisely because of how the situation had resolved. "We need someone to lead the new innovation task force," he continued. "Your analytical approach and attention to detail make you a strong candidate. Are you interested?" I accepted, of course. But as I left his office, a nagging question followed. Me. Had I secured this opportunity through merit, or through a carefully orchestrated campaign to undermine a colleague? And if the latter, was I any better than Marina had been? A year has passed since Marina's departure. I've established myself in my new leadership role, earning genuine respect through work that's undeniably my own. Our team's metrics have improved steadily, with last quarter showing the best performance in 3 years. The CEO personally acknowledged our Innovation Task Force's contributions during the all-hands meeting last month. I encountered Marina unexpectedly at an industry conference in Chicago. We spotted each other across the exhibition hall, both momentarily frozen in mutual recognition. Eventually, she approached during a networking break. "Congratulations on the promotion," she said, her tone professional but distant. "Your team's results have been impressive." "Thank you," I replied. "How's the new position working out?" She offered a non-committal shrug. "Different challenges. I'm leading a smaller team now." She hesitated before adding, "For what it's worth, I've learned to be more careful about attribution and credit." I nodded, but offered no absolution. Some lessons come at a high cost. As I reflect on everything now, I still struggle with the ethics of my approach. Was I justified in using manipulation to counter manipulation? Did I compromise my own integrity while fighting for what was rightfully mine? These questions still trouble me occasionally, especially late at night. The experience permanently changed how I operate professionally. I document everything meticulously now. I share ideas in forms where attribution is clear and verifiable. I've become more strategic about when and how I present concepts, ensuring my contributions are visible to decision-makers. Marina's mistake was assuming I would continue being a passive victim indefinitely. My mistake, perhaps, was allowing righteous indignation to push me toward tactics I once would have considered beneath me. We both underestimated the consequences of our choices. Would I make the same decisions again? Probably, though perhaps with more careful consideration of potential collateral damage. In professional environments where formal systems fail to address intellectual theft, individuals sometimes need to create their own accountability mechanisms. The most important lesson I've learned is that protecting your intellectual contributions isn't just about personal credit. It's about creating an environment where honest work and true innovation are what get rewarded, not skillful appropriation of others' ideas. Updated. This really blew up beyond what I expected. Your comments have been incredibly insightful and thought-provoking. Many asked if I've needed similar tactics since. Honestly, no. My position now gives me platforms where my contributions are naturally documented. The moral question still lingers, though. Is it wrong to use someone's own tactics against them when traditional methods fail, or is it justified self-defense?